The Etape du Tour is the annual opportunity for amateurs to ride one of the professional stages of the Tour de France. This year it is off the scale hard. It's 30% longer, but more importantly, there's 20% more climbing than in any of the past 10 years. It goes 700 meters or 2,300 feet higher, and there are more steep sections on the climbs. I'm going to explain how you must train over the next 7 months so that you survive it and collect that coveted finisher's medal. To quantify why I think it's the hardest yet, I went back 10 years and built a Brutality Index. This takes account of both the total amount of climbing and how steep it is. Just look at that. 2026 is easily the toughest and the most brutal. So let's see why it's so hard. The stage starts in Le Bourg d'Oisans and finishes at Alpe d'Huez. It's 170 kilometers long, or 106 miles, which is the second longest since 2016. But more importantly, it's 5,400 meters, or 17,700 feet of climbing, which is the most ever. The first climb is the Croix de Fer, which is 24 kilometers with a couple of descents in the middle. Then after climbing the Maurienne Valley, you reach the monster combination of the Telegraph and the Galibier, which together add up to 34 kilometers with a short descent between them. The Galibier tops out at 2,642 meters, and you can definitely feel the altitude up there, which adds to the difficulty. Then, after a very long descent, the final climb to Alpe d'Huez is not up the usual main road, but by a side road to the Col de Sarenne, which actually tops out higher than Alpe d'Huez. Here's a map and another profile taken from Strava. I analyzed this in detail in my video on our YouTube channel that you can go and look at. None of these climbs are easy. All are tough on their own, let alone following on one from each other. There's also the little matter of the two long descents, which are technical in places and are dangerous for inexperienced cyclists. The final climb to the Col de Sarenne will be brutal because, as well as being steep, it's south-facing in the full sun, and unlike on the main road, there'll be very few spectators to encourage you, and there are no water points. It's a very quiet, remote road with no shade. I first went up there as the second climb on stage 3 of the Haute Route Alps, and I'll never forget that day, I can tell you. Inexperienced riders should expect to take from 11 to 14 hours to get this far, and honestly, I expect not much more than 50% to be able to finish. Literally thousands of people will either be walking or sitting or lying by the side of the road on this final climb. Here are some pics from the last few hundred meters of the Col de la Colombière, which was the final climb in 2018. The slope is at 11%, and the temperature was in the 30s, exactly what you can expect on the Sarenne. At this point, we'd climbed about 3,800 meters. This group was around the 1,000th place. Just look at how we were suffering. In this same place, 2 hours later, many people were either walking or sitting by the side of the road. I know this for a fact because my wife had to thread her way through them. Next summer, when you reach the equivalent moment, it will be after climbing over 5,000 meters and cycling for at least 9 hours, perhaps 12 or 13 hours. So this is what you need to train for. Pretty much anybody can get up the first climb. The real challenge is the last one. You can see on my face how hard I was finding it. So if you didn't know what you've let yourself in for, it's time to wake up. The 2026 Etape is the most brutal ever, a major physical and mental challenge. Let's talk now about what it will take to finish. It shouldn't come as a surprise that physical fitness is number one. If you're not fit enough, you won't make it. It's as simple as that. 2, it's crucial to set a sustainable pace on the climbs right from the start. Every year I see people make the same mistake and ride the first climb too hard. Learning how to get this right takes time and experience. This is one of the key things we help people with on our coaching camps. 3, next, what goes up must come down, and descending is a crucial skill in the Alps. There's an obvious advantage in going faster, but above all, this is a basic safety issue. Nobody talks about it much, but there are a significant number of serious accidents every year on the descents on the Etape. Don't let one of them be you. We work a lot on fast, safe descending skills during our camps. Point 4, you'll expend an enormous amount of energy riding the Etape. If you don't fuel your ride adequately, you will not be able to finish. Again, this is a skill you must learn. And finally, it will probably be the hardest physical challenge you've ever done. So obviously you need to be physically fit, but you also need mental strength because your brain's first job is to protect you. And so you will always crack mentally before you crack physically. So we talk about this on our camps too. Now, there are only 7 months or 32 weeks or about 220 days left, so it's urgent to get started. So how best to use those 220 days? Number one is pretty obvious. You need to ride your bike a lot. If you're serious about wanting to finish the Etape, you need to make training for it a top priority for the next 6-7 months. Number two, the more long rides and especially long climbs you can do, the better. To some extent, you can simulate these on an indoor trainer or by riding into a strong headwind, but it's not the same. Number three is essential for your safety. Learn to descend in the mountains. You can easily gain 15 minutes during the Etape by improving your descending skills and without taking any silly risk. It's pure technique. We see this every year working with the people who come on our camps. They leave not only faster, but a lot safer. If there's no way you can get to the mountains before the Etape, you must find a safe place where you can practice high-speed cornering. Number four, to finish the Etape, you're going to expend between somewhere like 5,000 and 8,000 calories, depending essentially on how much you weigh. The last time I rode this particular loop, I expended 6,420 calories, and I weighed at the time 71 kilograms. A woman around 50 kilograms might only need 5,000 calories, but a man at 85 is likely to need as much as 8,000 calories. This is a massive amount of energy, and I was taking gels and drinking pretty much continuously from start to finish. You should practice this on every ride longer than 2 hours and get used to eating and drinking every 10 or 15 minutes. Now let's talk about putting this in a plan. Remember what Benjamin Franklin said about plans. They are super important. If you're hoping to wing it, you can expect to fail. So a quick recap of what needs to be in your plan. Ride your bike a lot. Do long climbs as often as possible. Learn to descend and corner safely, and learn to eat and drink while cycling. I'm now going to talk about the key design principles for an effective training plan. The first is consistency. You must train several times every week, preferably something every day, and minimize the periods with no training. The second is overload. This is necessary to force your body to adapt. Without overload, nothing changes. But with too much overload, you'll either get injured or you'll start to overtrain, which is equally bad. So there's a Goldilocks level which is just right. I'll tell you how to find it. The third principle is a progressive increase in volume. Unless you are starting from an extremely low base, you cannot expect to double and triple your training hours over a short time frame. A good rule of thumb is to increase by maybe 10% per month if you're already training around 8 to 10 hours per week, perhaps a little faster if you're training less. The fourth principle is to keep the intensity low. Let's put this in context. You're training for an extreme event, almost an ultra. You're going to be cycling for 10, 12, maybe even 14 hours. It's not about cycling fast. It's about cycling up steep mountains for a long time. So only long, consistent, low-intensity training is going to build the endurance you need. Think about it. If you were training for a 50-kilometer walk in the mountains, would you train by doing running intervals? Or sprinting on your local athletics track? Of course not. You would walk progressively longer distances every week. So let's clarify what I mean by low intensity. Low intensity means I can ride at this pace for a very long time. It's the equivalent of walking on the bike. This means I can breathe easily, I can talk easily. It means my heart rate is around 65% of the maximum. And if I'm riding with a power meter, the average power is around 65% of my FTP, which is the maximum average power I can sustain for an hour. The only time to break the low intensity rule is in the exceptional week where it's really impossible for you to train more than a couple of hours, in which case some medium intensity will be better to maintain your progressive overload. Let's talk about intervals for a moment. Many people are convinced you need to do high intensity intervals. Why? Because all professional and elite cyclists do interval training. But for most of us, building endurance is far more important. For the Etape, your whole focus should be on building endurance. Again, you'll be riding for 10 to 14 hours, and none of that will be at high intensity. So it's pointless training at high intensity. Not only is it pointless, it's actively damaging, because high intensity will significantly increase your fatigue and make it harder to benefit from your next long ride. There's one exception. The only type of interval I recommend is 10 to 20-minute blocks of low cadence on a steep climb where you have to push hard on the pedals, so high torque. But still keep the intensity low. Don't go hard. Finally, principle number 5 for your plan is that it's absolutely essential to build in adequate recovery. Your body only gets stronger when you give it time to rest and recover. Training creates the stimulus for your muscles to adapt, but the adaptation can only happen when you reduce the training stress for a while. This means that your increase in training load is a sort of sawtooth, not a smooth ramp. Increase the load, back off to get the adaptation, and then increase it again. So let's see how to build an actual training plan. Start with your constraints and map out the time you have available to train. Be realistic and confirm it with the key people in your life. That could save a lot of misunderstandings during the course of the year. Write down which days of the week you can train and for how long. Add in all your family, social, and work commitments that will prevent you from training. Once you've thought this through for the entire period between now and the event, you can block off week by week the training time you'll have available. To be brutally honest, if you can't train for an average of at least 10 hours per week, your chances of finishing will be very low. I say that based on my 20 years of cycling in the Alps and the last 11 years coaching people for events like the Etape. Every year I see the people who didn't train enough being unable to finish. So get as quickly as possible to 10 hours per week and then increase progressively to 15 hours or more. I myself am already averaging 20 hours of training per week, and I'll keep this up right through to the event. Now let's look at how to use this training time. Here's my recommendation for a standard training week from now to the beginning of June, about 6 weeks before the Etape. The most important ride is a long, low-intensity ride. Progressively increase the length to 6 hours or more. Don't fall into the trap of riding faster. The goal is not speed, it's endurance. As you get fitter, you can make the rides longer, but not necessarily faster. Given the nature of the Etape this year, all of your training should be like this, which is why all the other rides are also at low intensity, a bit shorter than the first. In my case, right now I'm doing 6 rides a week, with the longest at 4 hours and the shortest at 2 hours. By the way, although it's nicer to ride outside, weather permitting, doing it on a turbo is actually more efficient because there's no freewheeling or micro brakes. So don't worry about doing it on a turbo. So let's look now at what the week could actually look like. Here's a hard week on the left and an easy week on the right. Basically, you do hard weeks whenever you can and easy weeks when your body tells you that you need to rest and recover. First, the hard week. For most people, it will make sense to do their long rides at the weekend. Your longest ride in January might be 4 hours, but by the end of March, this should be up to 6 hours And by the end of May, you should be aiming at as much as 9 hours. Remember I talked about the Goldilocks level of training load? Let's talk about how you can tell when it's time to listen to your body and take a break. The key point is you should only do a long ride if your body is ready for it. If you're not ready for it, meaning you're unusually tired, you've got very stiff legs, or you're under a lot of stress, then going out for a 9-hour ride would literally be a waste of time. Supposing you can even finish it, because your body will not be able to create the adaptations you need. You'd be on the wrong side of the Goldilocks level. So don't fall in the no pain, no gain trap. The pros and some serious amateurs have ways to measure this. But all you really need to do is to note how you feel on these 3 scales soon after you get up in the morning, and use the scores to adapt your plan. Be honest, especially before a long ride. Red flags would be any measure at 5 or above. You can maybe still do a short ride or go for a walk, but avoid any long rides that will add a lot of extra stress to your system. Go back to normal training when all 3 scores are at 4 or less. So this could be your plan during an easy week, with the 2 weekend rides reduced from 6 hours in total to just 3 hours. Remember, you must be consistent, so you should fit in at least 3 other rides during the week. These will probably have to be short, especially if you're on a full-time job, but they're still important. If you can do more than 1 hour, do it. During the easy week, you might do only 2 instead of 3, depending on how you feel. It may not take a full week to get back to normal, so ramp back up as soon as you feel ready for it. To complete the picture, I strongly recommend you add in a couple of strength training sessions as well as at least 1 mobility session like yoga or Pilates. The point of building leg strength is to help you get up the steep climbs, while the value of mobility sessions is to work out the kinks and imbalances that build up if your only sport is cycling. In both cases, it's super important to use good technique, so find someone qualified to guide you. I've left Monday open during the weeks because it's good to have 1 day per week without formal training. Throughout the week, do as much easy movement as possible as well as the training, such as walking and climbing the stairs. So a typical hard training week in January might be 10 to 11 hours of training, while an easy week might be 6 hours. For me, the numbers are 20 to 22 for a typical week, and I don't normally drop below 12 to 15. By the time you reach the end of May, these numbers should progress to something like 15 hours during a hard week and 8 to 10 hours during an easy week. Now let's talk about the last 6 weeks. Your key objectives during the last 6 weeks should be, first, of course, to further strengthen your aerobic endurance. You can ride for 9 to 10 hours without being totally exhausted. Second, to work on your fatigue tolerance so you can make it up the final climb to the Col de Saren. Remember, that's the one that basically kills everybody. The easiest way to do this is to push a bit harder near the end of a long training ride when your legs are already tired. It's nothing complicated or highly structured. Just push harder over the last hour or so, preferably on climbs and at a low cadence. You can also break this down into 3 or 4 blocks of 10 to 20-minute intervals at low cadence if you want to. Third is to sharpen your skills in descending and cornering at speed. Remember, this is mainly about safety, but you will also learn to go faster. Fourth, to practice fueling your training and getting used to the large amount of carbs you'll need during the Etape. Remember, it's somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 calories that you're going to be burning. Finally, since it's likely to be very hot, you should also make sure to heat acclimatize. So here are your typical hard and easy weeks during the last 6 weeks. The week follows the same basic pattern as before, with 2 long rides at the weekend, but now you should progressively increase the ride duration during at least 1 7 to 10 hour ride by the end of June. So long as your body accepts the training load, you can also increase the duration of your rides during the easy week. If you're in a full-time job and you have a young family, you probably can't add much training time midweek, so stick to the 3 1-hour rides. If you have the time and your body lets you, you should extend one or more of these rides to a couple of hours. The Easy Week is all about reducing your training load to a level where you can recover, adapt, and get stronger. The suggestions given here might be too much or too little for any given person. You've got to find your own Goldilocks level, right? If it feels sustainable, good. If it doesn't feel sustainable, back off. It's really as simple as that. No one training session should be so hard you can't do the next training session. Finally, keeping your body mobile and flexible is even more important as your training load increases. Don't be tempted to cut the mobility sessions out, the yoga or Pilates. On the other hand, maintaining the strength sessions as well could easily be too much when the cycling load gets above 10, 12, 15 hours a week, so don't feel bad about cutting them down or stopping them completely. Now, I highly recommend you organize a week's training camp during the last 6 weeks. The purpose is, of course, to do a big block of training. You can train probably 20 hours during a training camp, maybe even more, and thus benefit from the super compensation for the Etape, while working on your core skills for cycling on Alpine roads and also heat acclimatizing. The ideal time to do this is 3 weeks before the Etape, when you can kill all 4 birds with one stone and leave 2 weeks to recover and taper. You can also do it earlier in June, but you'll then need to go through a new cycle of recovery followed by a high training load, and you may lose the heat acclimatization depending on where you live. So if you listen this far, you're obviously keen to do as well as you can. This is how we can help you. Join one or both of our 2 coaching camps in the Canary Islands at the end of January to get your season started and make sure you have the right training plan. And then again in Bourg d'Oisans at the end of June to ride the actual route and pick up plenty of tips for the big day. Both these camps are fast selling out. We really only have a few places left, so be quick. Finally, you can join one of the many people we coach one-to-one to make sure you stay on the right track and get the best possible results from your training. Here's the feedback from Loic, one of our participants in 2024, who was very clear that without our support, he would not have been able to finish. He came back and had an even better ride in 2025. Here's another testimonial, this one from Steve, who loved the race plan we built for him, and he did very well. And here's another one from Raminder saying that without our support, he would not have avoided the broom wagon. So there you go. If you follow this advice, you should be ready for a successful ride next summer. I'm going to post another video at the beginning of July to tell you how to get your best result on the day itself. So subscribe to the Alpine Cols channel in order to get the notification. In the meantime, it's over to you. If you have any questions, post them below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you found this video helpful, please be kind enough to like it and leave a comment. It really helps. Thanks for listening. Good luck with your training.